Well, I'm joined now by the British Olympic marathon runner, Mara Yamauchi, and by rapper and podcast host Zuby. Great to see you here, Zuby, who once took part in a weightlifting competition 4 years ago as a woman to kind of prove a point. And guess what? He won. And by TalkTV contributor Paula Rhone-Adrien, who will still be attempting to defend the indefensible on this issue. Well, Glenique Frank, just to be clear, or Glen Frank, whichever Glen or Glenique is identifying as this week, was invited to appear but pulled out this morning. And like I say, Glenique or Glen, again, we don't know because Glenique's going back to being Glen in future races and has always run as Glen before, did say it was wrong. But you are asked when you enter the London Marathon, which category do you want to run in? Male or female? Or non-binary? It's ridiculous. The whole thing is ridiculous, as I keep saying. But there are still people who think this is perfectly fair and equal. And we should all just stop making such a fuss about it. So, let's have a little chat about this. Well, Zuby, let me start with you, because you come all the way in here. Great to see you in London. I love the fact that you tested all this 4 years ago, and you did it to raise the problem as an issue. And, of course, you demolished all the females that you were up against, because physically, as a biological male, you're simply more powerful. But you expose the futility, if you like, and unfairness and inequality of self-identity if it becomes limitless like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been talking for more than 5 years at this point, but especially the past 4 publicly about the absurdity of the issue. And that's why back in February 2019, I had that tweet I put out there with a video of me breaking the British women's deadlift record while claiming I identified as a woman.
You literally broke the women's record.
Yeah, it was. So to be clear, it wasn't in a sanctioned competition, but it was from one of my training sessions, just showing how easily I could lift a weight that's
Well, we're looking at it now.
kilos.
This is you as a woman.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly difficult.
Lifting about 17 Paula Rhone-Adrien, I would imagine. And I know you like a bit of weightlifting, Paula, so why don't you try and lift a bit of that later in your gym, see how you get on. Here's a spoiler alert, you won't be able to. Not because you're not a very strong lady and not because you're not a very committed athlete in your own right.
Because of the biological differences.
Now, do you get it? Is the penny dropping?
So I get it, but what I wonder is whether you get it, Piers.
What am I missing?
What I wonder is why it is you're struggling with the fact that some people are different.
I don't.
And the people who have decided that they are different and who want to live a different life, some of them have the capacity to do that medically and legally, and they should be permitted to do that.
Totally respect that. Always have done. Always supported trans people's rights to fairness and equality.
Okay, so
right to the point, it clearly erodes women's rights. That's my only concern about it.
So where the absurdity comes, I worry, is where we've got this example of the marathon runner. And this was a fun run. It's the marathon.
It's not a fun run.
Great example. It's a great example.
No. Tens of thousands of people raise a ton of money, and it's a serious competitive race.
It's a great example of people getting the opportunity to push themselves, not only personally, but also in terms of their charitable charities. And this is a person who did that. And they are now so fearful, this person. They're so fearful. They've had to apologise. They've had to offer to hand back their medal.
Well, they weren't that fearful because Glen entered as Glenique, and Glenique finished a lot further in the race in the women's field than Glen would have done in the men's field.
And how relevant is that to you, Piers?
Actually, to everyone I know, to everybody I know that races in the London Marathon, every position counts. They all want to improve their time.
It wasn't a gold medal in the Olympics.
Actually, the front
about
runners in the London Olympics.
It was about taking part.
So you think it's meaningless, the London Marathon?
No, absolutely
it's
not.
Actually
I've competed in the London Marathon,
right.
and I see people running past me. I see people running past me of all different sizes, shapes, running for all different types of causes. And that's what it's all about. It's inclusivity.
All right, but let me bring in an actual Olympian rather than somebody who sounds like she thinks she ought to be one. Mara, you've been listening very patiently to all this. You've been a proper athlete here. Just try and explain to me, or to Paula really, why this is so unfair.
So males and females have, there's a massive difference in our physical abilities. In upper body strength, like in Zuby's bench press and deadlift women's world records, you know, there's a massive, massive difference. In running, it's about 10%. Therefore, we must have sex-based categories, male and female. Otherwise, females would be entirely absent from sport. And to answer Paula's point about it being a fun run, yes, a lot of people enjoy it and do great things like raising money, but Glenn could have done that in the men's category and not caused unfairness for the 20,000 odd females who ran in the mass race. I have to also clarify that Glenn ran as Glenn in the Tokyo Marathon last month, but also in the women's category, as he did in London. And, you know, you can say, well, the mass race is just a bit of fun, the mass race at the London Marathon. But an event like that is either a sports competition or it isn't. If you're going to say it's just a fun run, then why do they have a measured course? Why do they have timing equipment and a referee to enforce the rules? You know, even if people enjoy themselves and earn and raise money for charity, it still is a competition. Rules matter, and people have to respect the rules. And Glenn on GB News gave an interview last night. It was clear he had no idea what the rules are. He was talking about surgery and passports, but the rules, British athletics rules, which apply to the London Marathon, required testosterone suppression to under 5 nanomoles for 12 months to become eligible, and then continue suppression to remain eligible. He was talking about hormone therapy in the future tense, so it's clear he's done no testosterone suppression at all. He wasn't eligible for the female category, and therefore my view is he should be disqualified because he's not eligible.
Well, no question. There's no question of that. I mean, what's interesting to me, two things about you in particular. One, your courage in speaking out about this, because you were, of course, immediately bombarded with insults and abuse and threats, called a transphobe, a TERF, their favourite phrase, for stating what are simple biological facts. But also you are, by your own admission, you're slightly left-leaning. You're not on the right. You're not trying to score some political point against the left. Yeah. And like a lot of people, I mean, I've always probably politically been slightly left to centre, maybe centre. I'm really a journalist. I don't really care about an ideology either way, to be honest with you. But I'm certainly not on the right. But like a lot of people, like you, like me, like Bill Maher interviewed last week in America, we find ourselves completely bemused that people, so-called liberals, on this ultra woke side now of the spectrum, have lost their minds.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a centre-left voter all my life, but for me, this isn't about left or right. For me, this is about the right to safety, dignity, privacy, and in sport, fair competition and safety for 51% of the population. And people say, oh, Glenique only finished 6,100 and something, you know, get a life. But nearly 14,000 women suffered a worse finish position. Yeah. What I would say to people who say that is, OK, how many women do you think it's OK to suffer to indulge the feelings of one male competing in the female category? Give us a number.
Yeah, I totally agree. And what about, I mean, I said to Paula, what about Laurel Hubbard, the New Zealand weightlifter, who qualified for the first Olympics a couple of years ago, having set records in the women's field, but she took the place of a woman weightlifter. The average age for the weightlifters in that competition was about half Laurel Hubbard's age. She'd been very unsuccessful as a male weightlifter by comparison, but she deprived a biological female of an Olympic place in that team. That, to me, is completely wrong. Now, someone said to me on TV in America last week, a female congresswoman, well, what would you do about it then? I went, well, fine, I want trans athletes to be able to compete fairly and to be able to compete. So they either compete against their biological sex, which seems to me physically fair, or they have a completely new category of transport. Why not?
So there's two things here. Just getting back to the marathon. If Glenique wasn't eligible, then there's no discussion here. Because absolutely, if she wasn't eligible, then she wasn't eligible. What I'm talking about in terms of the marathon is, when I ran the marathon, I was running with men and women, young people, old people, all running together. And what I'm saying is this fear that the headline around this is bringing up. It's bringing up a fear. It's making very vulnerable people, and we know that they're very vulnerable because we're told by the stats that they are the most likely group of people to commit suicide. So this is not just about a fun run. This is not just about women who require vulnerable spaces. This is not what we're talking about.
Okay, but Zuby, I would say to that, of course, I'm very aware of the issues that trans people have had and continue to have. But I think people like Leah Thomas, people like Glenique here, they cause massive, bigger problems for the trans community. They make the whole thing look like a mockery.
Yeah.
They make a mockery of being trans.
Yeah.
And when you put your hand up as a 6'4" biological man and say, I am now competing against women in a swimming pool, no trans person who doesn't want that attention is doing anything other than saying, this is
the outrage framing commentary. What you're witnessing here isn't just frustration, it's a strategic framing of the issue as symbolic rather than isolated. When Piers Morgan calls it embarrassing, he's not focusing on one athlete. He's positioning this as evidence of a broader cultural shift he believes has gone too far. This matters because language like this doesn't just describe reality, it shapes it. By framing the situation as ridicule-worthy, it pressures the audience to see the debate through a lens of social breakdown rather than policy complexity. But here's the deeper question. Is this really about fairness in sport, or is it about who gets to define fairness in the first place? The athletic perspective commentary. When Mara Yamauchi weighs in, her argument carries a different kind of authority, not emotional, but experiential. She shifts the discussion from abstract identity politics to competitive integrity. Her point about placement finishing ahead of thousands subtly dismantles the idea that performance level doesn't matter. Even if the athlete didn't win, sport isn't only about podium finishes. It's about rankings, qualification thresholds, and opportunity distribution. This introduces a critical nuance often ignored in public debates. Fairness in sport operates on a spectrum, not just at the elite level. The mockery argument. Piers' claim that this situation makes a mockery of transgender issues is particularly revealing. It suggests a belief that controversial cases like this undermine broader acceptance. But that raises a tricky paradox. Does visibility, even controversial visibility, harm a movement? Or does it force society to confront unresolved tensions it would rather ignore? History shows us that social change is rarely neat. The most uncomfortable cases often become the ones that define future policy. The bigger picture commentary. What's missing from many debates like this is a serious discussion of solutions, because the reality is, sports categories have always evolved: weight classes, age groups, disability classifications. But gender categories are uniquely sensitive because they intersect biology, identity, and rights. So the real issue isn't whether this case is right or wrong, it's whether current systems are equipped to handle a reality they were never designed for. Cliffhanger takeaway commentary. This isn't just about one marathon, one athlete, or one controversial finish. It's about a question that has no easy answer. Can fairness and inclusion truly coexist in competitive sport? Or will one always come at the expense of the other? Because if this debate continues unresolved, we're heading towards something bigger. Not just disagreements, but a complete redefinition of what competition itself means. And that's where things get really interesting. What do you think should sports adapt or draw a firm line? Drop your thoughts below and don't forget to subscribe for more fearless breakdowns of the world's most heated debates.